Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox, where we talk about all things Xbox, old and new. And on today's agenda is The Hobbit from 2003 for the original Xbox.
Long ago, the most powerful treasure in Middle-earth fell into the hands of a most unlikely hero. The Hobbit. The adventure of a lifetime beckons.
Developed by Inevitable Entertainment and published by Sierra Entertainment, this game is based on the J.R.R. Tolkien novel of the same name about Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit, and his journey across Middle-earth to help a group of dwarves take back their homeland. And this game is based off of the novel only. It has nothing to do with the future Peter Jackson films that were in very far out pre-production at the time, or the earlier 70s animated film. This is because Sierra had the rights to just the Tolkien novels, and EA had the rights to all film to video game conversions. So if you're familiar with that hyper-realistic look of the EA Lord of the Rings games, you won't really be getting that here. The Hobbit features more of a cartoony look, which is more in line with the cheery nature of the original 1937 book. I actually had the pleasure of picking up and reading this book only a few months ago, and I loved it and was really interested in this game and wanted to see how it was in comparison. And this is surprisingly a faithful adaptation of the source material. There are a few minor omissions and additions, but I would say that the most differences comes from the lengthening of chapters in the book for gameplay purposes. In order to round out playtime, Bilbo goes on more side quests. He also fights against a lot more enemy types that wouldn't be featured until the later Lord of the Rings books, which whenever the game closed and I beat it, it felt like it was really understandable for a game to add on more experiences, and it never hurts the game. It still feels like the team really loved The Hobbit, and it never really loses the heart of those Tolkien novels. From the beginning, we are treated to these really nice looking storybook animated cutscenes, as opposed to CGI cutscenes for the most part. This adds to its whimsical, fable-esque plotline, really drawing you into that fantasy world. Full motion cutscenes do happen, and I'm not gonna lie, they do look a little bit janky, so the picture book style really helps it. Starting in the Shire, you are drawn in by those bright colors and the full cast of hobbits. I was surprised to find that a lot of these levels, they offer side quests and other objectives to do. Each level is self-contained, but there's a lot more to offer than meets the eye, making it feel less linear than it could have. It also asks you to collect coins to buy upgrades for Bilbo, and you also collect what looks like Legend of Zelda's rupees, and those are your experience points to get your health up. It offers a collectathon feel, but wrapped up in a very detailed Middle-earth setting. Level design in The Hobbit is one of its strongest suits for most of the game. The interconnectedness of the levels adds a layer of depth to some of these settings. The level I think of the most fondly is the Wood Elf Kingdom. Not only does it offer stealth areas in the Wood Elf dungeons, but offers caves to take out spiders and long winding corridors to explore, and they feel so detailed. It never felt too big to be confusing, but it was enough to make the area feel fleshed out. Now, as I was saying earlier, a lot of these chapters are stretched out to fit the length of the video game, and you can really feel it on a couple levels towards the end. Specifically in the Lake Town level, which I'm gonna be honest is beautifully designed. It looks incredible, but there is so much backtracking between the areas of this town, asking you to go back and forth between the same warehouse areas, and it feels like an extended amount of time compared to the rest of the levels, and I was getting kind of tired of it by the end of it. And speaking of tedious levels, the second to last level asks you to rebuild the Dwarven City. and this level killed some of the experience for me. This level is too large. It takes ages to go from one area of the map to the next, and the quests here ask you to travel back and forth from one extreme of the map to the next, making for an entirely tedious experience. It felt to me like it was a lazy attempt to lengthen the game in its finale rather than keep up that solid level design that it had throughout. Other than that though, the only real negative this game has is the combat. Not necessarily bad in any way, it just lacks anything of interest. You get your walking stick and your sword, and you kind of just push the same button over and over again to take out enemies. It's like the bare minimum for combat, but luckily this game is more about platforming than it is its combat. The platforming here is great. Jumps feel tight, and jumping from heights you never seem to have any issues missing. It never has problems with perspective or clunky controls getting in the way. It's a tightly developed game, and it's obvious the team at Inevitable Entertainment were playing a lot of the contemporary platforming Nintendo games at the time, and they emulated it here with success. Traveling the many areas of Middle-earth is fun and very well put together. It has a sort of ease that I can appreciate, especially for a game that is targeted more for a family audience. Unfortunately, I was around 8 years old when this was new, and I wasn't interested in it, mainly because it didn't have that hyper-realistic look of the EA movie games. But playing it now, I feel like I would have really enjoyed this when I was younger. It also doesn't help that a lot of contemporary reviewers would give this game mixed reviews, citing that the world building is good, but gameplay was far too easy, which I don't necessarily think is that much of a negative here. I never thought it was dead easy, but it felt like a very accessible game to me for anybody that has interest in the source material. If you like the books, but don't play a lot of video games, well, you can still enjoy this experience. I honestly think fans of The Hobbit should check out this video game, because it is a solid adaptation. We hardly see books to video game adaptations, and this is one of the most faithful versions of The Hobbit that has been released. The beautiful world, the sense of wonder, and even an incredibly fully orchestrated soundtrack settles you into Middle-earth. I appreciate that we have a Lord of the Rings game that focuses more on the exploration of the world than it does the wars and the combat. The Hobbit has its stumbling points, but I think it's worth trying out just to experience how well done they pull off the world of Middle-earth. In my original Xbox ranking list, I'm going to put this as my favorite of the bunch for now, especially because I think I will be revisiting this later on. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to give a like and subscribe. I recently came back to this channel over reading some really wonderful comments from people, and it gave me that encouragement to keep going at it. So please be sure to let me know how it is. If you enjoyed these games, I'd love to hear from you. And you know what? I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.